My name is Zach with AI Automation Elite, day 4 of 14 days of automation. Let's get started. Today we're going to be working with Webhooks, OpenGPT, Docs, Gmail, HTTP requests, lots of good stuff. Now, the scenario today is very useful, although a bit generic and probably not quite realistic. The goal is to give you a series of tools so that you can automate what you need. And when a new email comes in instantly, notice immediately as the data arrives. So this is not on a 15-minute or 30-minute or once a day. This is whenever new information comes in. It will send that information to GPT. It will summarize it and then print it and append it to a Google Doc. Let's go to the first part. So this is a 2-part automation, I believe our first one. So here we're watching for new emails, and when this trigger runs, if it finds a new email, it will post that so that our webhook can receive it and do work with it. So let's take a little bit of a look real quick what the end result is. We have it set up that we get a subject, right? The email date, the date it was summarized. Perhaps you only check emails every few days and you want to know both the date it came in and the date it was run. A summary, which gives you a summary. Anything actionable inside of that email. And if there's a recommended response. In this case, says no direct response required unless you have specific questions. So this can be really handy when you get newsletters or, man, there's just a million opportunities. The first thing that we need to do is go into our Google Drive. So we'll just go to the home real quick. And we need to create a file, a doc, that's going to have all of our summaries on it. All right. So let's just come over here and notice, let's see where we're at. Let's go to our folders. Let's go into our folder that we want, automation, learning, and let's create a new doc here. So we come to new, docs, and we got a new doc, and we don't even have to put anything in it. We can just come up here and call this, let's name it something clear, email summary, and save that. That's all we have to do. We'll look back at it later, but we don't have to do any more with it. Okay. This is part 1, and this is part 2. All right, let's get started. So let's go ahead and go home to organization so we can get a new scenario. We'll create our new scenario, and let's go ahead and name it so we don't forget. And what we will call this is actually going to be part 2, because first we need to set up our webhook, and we have a couple of things we need. So we're going to call this email webhook, right? Just for easy naming. And this will be scenario number 2. Okay, so let's save that so we don't forget. Now let's come over here and go to a new module, and we want webhook. Now there are 3 different options. Right? If we come over here, we look at the 3 options, 2 triggers and 1 action. We're looking for triggers, and we want custom webhook. And notice it is instant. So we'll come over here. We'll say create a webhook. We will name it. I'm going to stick to the same naming across the board. It just makes my life easier. Webhook. All right, so this is email webhook. We don't have any IP restrictions at this time, so we'll go ahead and save it. Now notice it's creating this URL for us, and it's in action, so we're just going to leave it and go ahead and go to our other one. So now we're going to remake our step 1. We'll go back to our and create a new scenario. We're going to name this one as well. This is email webhook 1. There we go. Because this is actually what's going to trigger. Okay, now that we've renamed it, we want to go ahead and start with our Gmail connection. So we want to make sure that it is connected. The next thing that we want to do is pick where do we want the emails to come from. Now, in a situation where you have maybe business replies coming in or something like that, you would put them in a specific location. But for now, we're just choosing the inbox. We're going to use a simple filter, And we're just going to say all emails for now. Again, you can choose which one of these best fits your need. Lastly, we want to set the maximum number of results to 1. Now, we want to take whatever new email happens when we trigger, and we want to send that to an HTTP request. Specifically, we want to make a request. Now, if we go back over to our other webhook, okay, and says successfully determined, we copy this email webhook. We'll just say OK. And we come back over and we paste that here in the URL. Right, so notice this webhook is now going to be listening whenever we have it activated or running. We want to change our method to a post because we are sending information. And in the HTTP world, there are a few: get, post, put, patch, and delete. Okay, so we're going to say post. The next thing we want to do is add query string. So we're going to add the item, and we're going to say, what information do we want? Well, we want the subject, right? So let's go ahead and grab the subject, and we come here to subject. Oops. We want that down here. The value is the subject. Let's add another parameter and say date, because we want the date it was sent. Right? So we'll add the date there. And finally, let's add one more, which is going to be the body. And this is the body or the text content of the email. Now that is the entirety of this. We watch when we run our trigger, so whatever our schedule is, checks for new email. If there is one, it sends it to the HTTP make a request post that will then trigger in real time our webhook. So let's go ahead and save this, and let's run this just to make sure that we have an email setting here. Okay, we got an email, we have an error here. So you may get this 400 bad request. That means if we come back to our webhook, we did not save it. Time and run it, 1 and 1, an email waiting. So let's go to our scenario over here. So when we get a new email, what do we want to do with it? I think the first thing we want to do is go to ChatGPT and create a completion. So make sure you're connected, and once you're connected, it will give you the option to pick a model. I'm going to go to Form Mini. Our tokens, I'm going to set that around 500. This is the maximum number of tokens. The next thing that we want to do is add our message. So let's add a message, and let's create a user message. Now this is going to be where we tell it what we want it to do. You are a email summary master and will be providing a summary of each email that you get. Respond in plain text. We don't want HTML or Markdown. No HTML or Markdown. When you respond, you will follow the following structure, ensuring ensuring that you provide each one based on the prompt. Okay. So what's the first thing that we want? Okay, well, we want first, I think we want actionable items or summary. Let's go with summary. This is the summary of the email. We also want actionable items. This is the most, let's change this. Let's say summary. This is the most important parts of the email summary. Okay. That way we get the most important highlights. Summary highlights. Highlights. Actionable items. This is the action requirements of the email. Also, let's say recommended response. This is your recommendation on a response and what it should cover. And finally, we want to give it the subject. Here is the information to summarize. We can say run once, use the existing data. So now we have some information, and so we come back over here and we can provide the body for the summary. Great, so now we should have a summary. The next thing that we want to do is come over here. We want Google Doc, and we want to insert a paragraph to a document. Okay, so we have the connection. The next thing we want to do is say select by drop down is the easiest, my drive, and now we're going to find that file. So remember, we put it in automation and then learning, and finally we named it email summary. What do we want to do? Insert a paragraph by appending to the body of the document, right? That's what we want. And here is the information that we want to append. Now we're going to do some really cool functions right here to customize our data the way we want it to work. So the first thing I would do is add a new line, right? We want to be able to separate new email summaries coming in. So if we come over here to our text, we have this new line. So let's add a couple of new lines. The next thing is let's add some kind of notification, right? I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just so it's roughly the same on each side. We're going to say, let's say email summary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What's the next thing that we want? Let's go with the subject. So we want the subject. And we also, as we discussed, we want the email date. And perhaps we want the summary date. If you're stretched out a bit where you're doing, delays, maybe daily or every other day or something like that, you want to know the date that it was summarized, so as you're going back through it, it's very easy to find. So let's say summary date is going to come from here, right? And so now, when we come back to our star, let's start with the summary. We have choices, message, and content. Okay, so this is going to be our content. The subject comes from the webhook. The email date and summary date are going to need a little bit of customization. And so let's look at this. We have the date function over here. So if we come to the calendar, we have this format date. So let's come to date, and we have this now. So we want to convert that into a method that makes sense. So again, we have our format date. In the first space, we have now. That's when it happened. When we get to email date, it'll be slightly different. So this is important. Then after the semicolon, we need to structure how we want it. US, we say month, dot, or slash, or dash, whichever one you like, day. The reason we do MMDD is so that we have space for the 2-digit months or days. So if we just had 1 month, it would get up to 9 and then it would crash. Year, and that's typically 4. Then we have hours, 2 capital H's for hours, colon, and then we have minutes. The next thing we want to do is tell it where are we, so it knows what to convert it to. And where I am is America / Denver, and that's Mountain Standard Time. So this should give us the month, the day, the year, the hour, and the minute in Denver time that it was summarized. Email date. So let's go back to format. But now, instead of date now, we want to use the date that we got from here. And now we want to go ahead and format this the exact same way. Oops, let's put A. And then we want it to be America / Denver. One thing I would like to do is I would like to have space between the dates and the body. So let's go ahead and add a new line here as well. That looks pretty good. Let's save it. Now let's go ahead and save the entire document. Make sure that everything is saved. Let's come back over here and make sure this is saved. Run a new watch. Remember, this is based on time. The webhook is based on instant following this being triggered. Let's run that. Looks good. Now we come back over here. If I set this to schedule, it already arrived, so I would have to run the other one again. So we're just going to use run once. Tell it use existing data. All right, it ran, created a completion, and finally says it wrote it to the doc. So let's go take a look. Great. Email summary, our subject, our email date and summary date, nicely formatted. There is the summary, action items, and the recorded response. Now, if you're interested in this automation or any other automation that we do, I do have a new school, AI Automation Elite. All of our materials are included in the membership. It will include the prompts, the blueprints, and anything else that we cover. Lots of great people in the community, software engineers to hobbyists, everything in between. So if you're interested, check it out. The goal of this scenario is not that you mimic this, it's that you determine what you want to do. All right, let's get a filter based on what kind of email we want coming in, or anything, but in this case, an email. We then post that to our webhook so that when the webhook runs, it takes the information, goes to ChatGPT, all of this stuff inside of here, whatever we tell it to, and then that will send it to whatever the next module is. There are 1,000 options I can think of right now, which means there are millions of combinations. Your homework is to find the one that solves one problem in your day, and happy automating. Congratulations on day 4. We'll see you next time.